I am a lifelong resident of District 5. I was born and raised at Denver Health Medical Center, and then I lived in the North Denver projects. I attended Denver public schools my entire life, and then the University of Denver. I have been a lifelong advocate and fighter for injustice and social justice rights. I've raised about $20 million and sent about 63,000 students to college in 13 states through College Summit. I also helped co-author House Bill 1085 when I was 12 years old, which increased the penalties for drug abuse and drug crimes within the Denver Housing Authority projects. My goals are 5 for 5: public safety, healthcare, education, public policy, and the economy. As an educator, education is #1 to me, so I will fight for education. My first year in office, I will push through legislation that supports the efforts of the economic growth of Colorado and sustainable growth and thinking outside of the box. I am the community's voice, and I represent the community, and I represent all of you. I've seen some of the challenges and mistakes that the state of California made, and I think as Colorado, we have the opportunity not to make those same mistakes. Looking at green jobs and creating incentives to bring those jobs to Colorado and what we could do to be able to get those jobs here. Medical research, I think it's important to continue to develop our medical research campus, and through that we can continue to get a lot of medical research dollars. Also, medical marijuana is a huge issue here in Colorado, and I think it is important for us to take a look at it as legislators and figure out what we can do best with it. As an educator and as somebody that looks at the economy, and when the economy is bad, education goes first, and I see funding being cut there first. So taking that money to regulating marijuana, medical marijuana, and using that money to support the schools, support those taxes and those tax increases, I think is tremendously important. So those are some of the 3 main things that I would do, and then we also want to increase the teacher employment by increasing incentives for teachers. So those are some of the major issues. The tax cut issues for me is very intense, and I think it's a tough issue to look at. None of us like tax cuts, none of us like budget shortfalls, but it is the sign of the times, and it is something that we have to do and that we have to look at. So for me, I would look at the entire budget line for line and go through what works, what hasn't worked, and fix what needs to be done. So as somebody who grew up receiving the benefits, I grew up with Medicare, and we had Medicaid as a child, and so I had healthcare to the age of 18, and then when I went off to college, I ended up having healthcare because that was what was required. Well, most of the people in my family do not have healthcare, and most of the people in our district do not have healthcare either because they're underemployed or they're unemployed. Healthcare is a civil right. It is a right that should be guaranteed to all that live in this country, no matter race, color, creed, or if you're an immigrant or not. I believe that we have to come and reform that, and we should create a single-payer system. I will die for that. I believe that the United States Congress and Senate should pass a very concise bill, and then we should be able to tailor that bill in the state of Colorado to fit our needs. A one-size-fits-all is not going to work. And so whatever the United States legislature puts forward, we should be able to, as a state and as legislators, be able to figure out what's going to work best for us. I'm tired of seeing many young men, women, and men that come up to me that I've been talking to in my district, and tios and tias and abuelitas in the district, that have come up to me and says, we just want to be able to go and not have to spend $500 a month on my health care. So what they end up doing then is they go and I heard a story last night while I was at the CPC meeting, and they start getting caught up in this tunnel, in this circle, in this vortex of they go and have to take out loans here, and they end up owing all this money and never get their health care and their prescriptions. So I believe in a single-payer system, and I believe that it is a civil right for all in this country. As an educator in the 4 years that I spent in Washington, D.C., and also as the only candidate that actually attended DPS schools and graduated from DPS schools, I've seen a tremendous number of students from West High School and North High School, and the schools that I've worked with, that could go on, that could have went on and been doctors and lawyers and anything they wanted to be. But they've struggled with the fact that they couldn't get to college because of the tuition difference between in-state and out-of-state. I worked with ACE scholarships back in 2003 when I ran for the school board, and we were really looking at trying to figure out how we're going to come up with money to be able to send some of these gifted students to college. In the 4 years that I was in D.C. and the time that I spent meeting with over 100 legislators across the board, and this is when we had a Republican Congress and a Republican Senate, Chairman Regula came to me and said, "Jose, what can we do?" They called me to go before the United States Congress and testify about the issues. And I did, and I addressed the issues of, one, every student, if they've been here and they can speak and write English and pass the high school exit exam, they should have the opportunity to be eligible for financial aid and go on to college and to create great sustainable economic growth for this country. Each year, over 200,000 students that could go to college don't make it to college. And if they did, that would be an $80 billion, let me say it again, $80 billion tax revenue for the United States of America. In that time, in 4 years since we raised the $20 million, College Summit, we have gotten 63,000 students, which is about $20 billion tax revenue. I won't take the credit for that, except for I did write the National Strategic Document, which increased that, which got the money, and my time on Capitol Hill. So I understand this issue, I think, better than anybody else of what tuition equality means, and that we should pass this from day one, and I will support legislation immediately, and that will be the first bill that I submit if I'm elected as your next state legislator. My Nino, who passed away from cancer 3 years ago, who served in the United States Navy for 17 years and raised me after my father was murdered, had never done drugs and had never partied or drank, and as he succumbed to colon cancer, he decided he was going to smoke marijuana and partake in the medical marijuana use of that. And I seen what it did for him in terms of him allowing him to be able to deal with the issues and understand what he was going to be dealing with as his time was nearing in. I've had a lot of opportunities to speak with tons of patients in our city and in our state, and I really believe that Colorado could set the standard in terms of how to regulate it, the benefit, the use of it for medical use, and that's also the economic side of it, how we can regulate it and actually make some money to benefit the state of Colorado. It's about getting out there and building those relationships and speaking to the voters. It shouldn't be about the amount of money that you raise. In 2003, when I ran for the DPS school board, we knocked on 6,000 doors. We had $1,000, and we got 10,000 votes. Those are 10,000 relationships that I built. And those people stood up and said it wasn't about the money. It was about building the relationship that you came and spoke to, you came to my door, that you spoke to me, that you heard my story. And I think that's important, because when people start throwing money in the corporations and the Supreme Court ruling is just appalling, I believe, because it takes away from some of the best candidates, and it takes away from people that would be very interested in running and could be, you know, they can be great candidates, excuse me. And so some of those candidates that would want to run won't run because they'll shy away from the establishment. I fight against the establishment. Anybody that wants to win this race better knock on doors, because we're knocking on doors, because we're building relationships, and you've got to beat me on the streets. The poorest community in Denver is the Sun Valley community, where I lived, where I seen and experienced and witnessed the murder of my best friend at 14 years old. And I said, and to committed myself at that point to being a public servant so that we would no longer have to bury young people, and that young people can go to college and they can live their American dream and they can be all that they want to be. I have family that is deep in the roots of working in the unions, and my mother, who one day I would love to be able to see her marry her girlfriend of 30 years. And I would love to be able to see my mom be able to retire after working in a cemetery for 30 years while digging graves. But yet she can't, because she has to continue to work. And those are the people that I fight for my Theo and my Tias that are struggling every day in this community. My values are rooted in the Chicano movement that I was raised in. As 14 years old, I took on the Metro Denver Gang Coalition and became the chairman and worked with Gene Galloway and Reggie Herder to create the Just Say No. And the Safe City Youth Summit now, which is the largest youth summit in the state of Colorado, I chaired that. I was the founder. It's about bringing the community together. Writing youth development curriculum for the Piton Foundation that is utilized in 5 states across the country. Raising $20+ million, giving 63,000 kids to school. They're all statistics. It's all fine and dandy, great. But I have given my life and dedicated my life to fighting for the rights of the people of Denver and the state of Colorado. No one loves this state more than I do, and no one is more passionate and will fight for this city more than I. I've buried 105 young people, and one of my major things is to decrease violence in my district. We have young people that are killing each other over tagging and names. We need to create programs and utilize programs and resources for these young people. Bring back YCPI. It was $5 million, and I went and testified and said we need not only bring $5 million, but increase the $5 million at 17 years old with Dave Stalls and from the spot. I will fight the fight for the common folk. I am one of those common folk. I have words for every job that I have been given. Nothing was given to me. I had to work from the bottom to the top. And I'm in this fight through and throughout. I'm in this fight for my community. My students at West High School, my students at North said, Jose, why do you put your life out there? That's what I was supposed to do. The Lord said, hey, this is what you're supposed to do. I don't need to be nowhere else but fighting for the people in my community and making sure that kids can go to college and we don't bury no more young people. We have health care, and my mom can marry her girlfriend of 30 years.